Uncover the chilling real-life stories of 15 once-famous stars whose lives spiraled into darkness. These celebrities shocked the world when they turned on the ones they loved, committing crimes no one could have imagined. Their transformations will leave you speechless. 1. Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman's story is one of heartbreaking irony. A man whose gift was bringing laughter to millions, yet whose life ended in the darkest tragedy imaginable. Known for his sharp wit and impeccable timing on Saturday Night Live, The Simpsons, and news radio, Hartman was a comedy icon of the 1990s. Off-screen, however, things were far less perfect than they appeared. Phil and his wife, Bryn Hartman, were often seen as a glamorous Hollywood couple, charming, attractive, and seemingly in love. But behind closed doors, their marriage was strained by Bryn's insecurities and struggles with addiction. Friends would later reveal that Phil often withdrew from confrontation, leaving emotional issues unresolved. On May 28, 1998, those tensions reached a devastating breaking point. Late that night, in their Encino home, Bryn returned from dinner with a friend. She had been drinking and using cocaine, a toxic combination that would soon turn deadly. While Phil slept, Bryn entered the bedroom and shot him 3 times, twice in the head and once in the side. In a haze of shock, she fled to a friend's house, confessed to the shooting, and later took her own life when police arrived. The Hartmans' 2 young children were found unharmed but forever scarred by the tragedy that unfolded that night. The entertainment world mourned deeply. A man who made others smile had died at the hands of someone he loved most. Phil Hartman's legacy endures in the laughter he gave the world, but his death remains one of Hollywood's most sorrowful reminders that fame and happiness don't always walk hand in hand. 2. Robert Blake. Robert Blake's life could have been lifted straight from one of his own movies, a Hollywood success story that twisted into a grim, real-life thriller. Once celebrated for his roles in Beretta and his chilling performance in Cold Blood, Blake was the kind of actor who could disappear completely into his characters. But in the years that followed, he would become the star of a story far darker than anything he had ever portrayed on screen. In 1999, Blake married Bonnie Lee Backley, a woman infamous for her controversial past and relationships with older men. Their union was chaotic from the start, filled with mistrust, jealousy, and bitter arguments. 2 years later, on a quiet May evening in 2001, their tumultuous relationship ended in bloodshed. Bonnie was found shot to death in Blake's car, parked outside a Los Angeles restaurant where the couple had just dined. The murder sent shockwaves through Hollywood and instantly turned Blake from a TV icon into a prime suspect. Prosecutors alleged that Blake had tried to hire hitmen to kill his wife, though the evidence was largely circumstantial. After a highly publicized trial that captivated the nation, the jury found him not guilty. Yet, in a later civil case, Blake was deemed responsible for Bonnie's death and ordered to pay $30 million in damages, a ruling that financially and emotionally ruined him. In the end, Robert Blake's story became a haunting reflection of his own filmography, a talented man consumed by scandal, betrayal, and tragedy. His life remains one of Hollywood's most chilling examples of when fiction and reality fatally collide. 3. Michael Jace. Michael Jace, best known for his role as a police officer in the hit TV show The Shield, lived a double life that blurred the line between fiction and reality. On screen, he portrayed a man sworn to uphold justice, but behind closed doors, he was spiraling toward a horrifying act that would destroy his family forever. Jace was married to April Jace, a former track and field champion whose grace and kindness earned her admiration both on and off the track. She was a devoted mother and one of the fastest women in America during her prime. But their marriage, once full of promise, had begun to crumble under the weight of financial troubles and growing resentment. On May 19, 2014, those tensions erupted in the most tragic way imaginable. That evening, neighbors in Hyde Park, Los Angeles, heard gunshots and frantic screams coming from the Jace home. When police arrived, they discovered a scene of unbearable grief. April Jace had been shot multiple times, including twice in the legs before the fatal shot that ended her life. What made the crime even more disturbing was that their two young sons witnessed the entire event. Michael Jace confessed almost immediately, even texting April's mother to admit what he'd done. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that his actions were calculated and cruel, not a momentary lapse of control. In 2016, he was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Once a respected actor, Jace's name became synonymous with tragedy and betrayal. The man who played a protector on television had become the villain of his own real-life story, one that ended in heartbreak, loss, and irreversible destruction. 4. Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit was once hailed as one of the most technically gifted professional wrestlers in the world, a man admired for his discipline, intensity, and unrelenting dedication to his craft. Fans saw him as a hero, a family man, and a living embodiment of perseverance. But behind the roar of the crowds and championship belts, Benoit was fighting silent battles that would end in one of the most shocking tragedies in sports history. On June 25, 2007, police entered Benoit's home in Fayetteville, Georgia, after he failed to appear for scheduled WWE events. What they found inside left the entire world reeling. Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel were all dead. Investigators determined that Benoit had strangled Nancy, smothered his son, and then taken his own life over a 3-day period. The details were horrifying. A man loved by millions had brutally destroyed his own family. As the investigation continued, medical experts discovered Benoit had severe brain damage caused by years of concussions and head trauma. His brain showed signs of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative disease that can cause violent mood swings, memory loss, and depression. Combined with steroid abuse and emotional strain, the condition may have pushed him to the edge. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the wrestling industry, forcing a reckoning about mental health and safety in sports entertainment. WWE erased Benoit's legacy from its archives, a decision that divided fans but reflected the enormity of his actions. Once a respected champion, Benoit's name became forever linked not to victory, but to devastation, leaving behind a legacy that serves as both a warning and a heartbreak. 5. Gig Young. Gig Young was the definition of classic Hollywood charm, suave, talented, and admired by audiences worldwide. He won an Academy Award for They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, and earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, marking him as one of the industry's brightest talents. But beneath the polished exterior of success lay years of hidden pain, addiction, and instability that would ultimately lead to a shocking and tragic end. By the late 1970s, Young's personal life was in turmoil. He had been married multiple times and was struggling with alcoholism and declining mental health. Still, in 1978, he seemed to have found happiness again when he married Kim Schmidt, a young and vibrant woman full of life. Just 3 weeks after their wedding, however, that illusion was shattered. On October 19, 1978, the newlyweds were found dead inside their Manhattan apartment, a scene that would horrify even the most hardened detectives. Police reports revealed that Young had shot Kim before turning the gun on himself. The motive was never made clear, as no note was left behind. Friends said the couple appeared happy, while others hinted that Young had been struggling with depression and emotional instability in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Gig Young's death shocked Hollywood, not only because of its violence, but because it stood in stark contrast to the charming persona fans adored. He was a man who had everything: fame, talent, and love, yet couldn't escape the shadows within. His story remains one of the most haunting reminders that even the brightest stars can fall into the deepest darkness when their pain goes unseen. 6. Robert Blake. Robert Blake was once one of Hollywood's most respected character actors. Celebrated for his gritty realism, and emotional depth. From his breakout role in Cold Blood to his long-running success on the TV series Beretta, Blake had built a reputation as a versatile performer who could embody both hero and villain with equal conviction. But in 2001, life imitated art in the darkest possible way when Blake's name became forever tied to one of Hollywood's most infamous murder cases. On the night of May 4, 2001, Blake and his wife, Bonnie Lee Backley, had dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant in Studio City. Afterward, she was found shot to death in Blake's parked car just outside. Blake claimed he had gone back to the restaurant to retrieve a gun he had left behind, a gun that, ironically, turned out not to be the murder weapon. The bizarre coincidence immediately raised suspicions. The investigation quickly revealed a tumultuous relationship between Blake and Backley. She had a history of fraud and manipulation, and Blake reportedly distrusted her motives for marrying him. Still, the brutality of the crime shocked everyone. In 2005, Blake stood trial for her murder, facing national media scrutiny that turned the case into a televised spectacle. Although he was acquitted of criminal charges, a civil court later found him liable for Backley's wrongful death, ordering him to pay millions in damages. His career never recovered. Once praised as an acting powerhouse, Robert Blake became a cautionary tale of fame overshadowed by scandal, a man who went from red carpets to courtroom drama, forever haunted by the unanswered question, did he truly get away with murder? 7. Phil Spector. Phil Spector wasn't just another name in the music business, he was a genius who redefined sound itself. As the mastermind behind the Wall of Sound, Spector produced timeless hits for artists like the Beatles, the Ronettes, and the Righteous Brothers. His music shaped an era, but his eccentric brilliance came with a dark, unstable edge that eventually exploded into a horrifying act of violence. By the early 2000s, Spector had become a recluse, retreating into his heavily guarded Los Angeles mansion. Those who knew him described him as paranoid and erratic, often seen carrying guns and displaying explosive temper swings. On February 3, 2003, that paranoia took a deadly turn. Lana Clarkson, a struggling actress and hostess, met Spector at a nightclub where she worked. Later that night, she was found dead in his home, shot in the mouth, a pistol resting near her body. Spector claimed it was an accidental suicide, insisting that Clarkson had shot herself while he tried to stop her. But evidence and witness testimony told a very different story. Multiple women came forward, describing Spector's history of threatening them with guns when they tried to leave his company. After 2 high-profile trials, he was found guilty of second-degree murder in 2009. Sentenced to 19 years to life, Spector spent his final years behind bars, dying in 2021 from COVID-19 complications. Once revered as a revolutionary music producer, he ended his life as a convicted killer. His story remains a haunting reminder that genius without empathy can lead not to immortality, but infamy, echoing through history like a broken record of brilliance turned to madness. 8. Johnny Lewis. Johnny Lewis was a rising star with a promising career and a reputation for intensity on screen. Best known for his role as Kip Halfsack Epps on the hit TV series Sons of Anarchy, Lewis had all the makings of a Hollywood success story. Talent, charm, and a growing fan base. But behind his cool exterior, he was battling inner demons that would lead to one of the most disturbing and tragic cases in recent Hollywood memory. In the years leading up to his death, Lewis's life spiraled out of control. He struggled with substance abuse and mental health issues, though by 2012, friends claimed he had been clean for months. However, his behavior had grown increasingly erratic and violent. He had been arrested several times for assault and vandalism, and those close to him feared he was suffering from severe psychosis. On September 26, 2012, police were called to a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood after reports of a violent disturbance. What they found was shocking. Lewis had brutally beaten his 81-year-old landlady, Catherine Davis, and killed her cat before falling or jumping to his death from the property's roof. Toxicology tests later showed no drugs or alcohol in his system, deepening the mystery of what had driven him to such a horrific act. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Hollywood, especially among his former castmates. Many described Lewis as a kind, creative soul undone by untreated mental illness. His death marked not just the end of a young career, but a grim reminder of how quickly Hollywood's rising lights can fade when the battle inside becomes too powerful to fight. 9. Oscar Pistorius. Oscar Pistorius was once the embodiment of inspiration, a double amputee athlete who defied the odds to compete against able-bodied runners on the world stage. Nicknamed the Blade Runner for his carbon fiber prosthetic legs, he became a global icon of perseverance and determination. But in a single, terrifying moment, his heroic image shattered, replaced by one of violence, tragedy, and controversy that would forever define his legacy. In the early hours of February 14, 2013, Valentine's Day Pistorius called police to report that he had accidentally shot his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, a rising model and law graduate. According to his account, he believed an intruder had broken into his Pretoria home and fired through the locked bathroom door in fear. But when authorities arrived, they found Steenkamp dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The explanation didn't add up. Investigators uncovered troubling details: a history of volatile behavior, gun obsession, and witnesses who reported hearing screams before the shots. The prosecution argued that Pistorius had acted in anger after an argument, not out of fear. The trial captivated the world, broadcast live across continents, as millions watched the fallen hero fight for his freedom. In 2014, Pistorius was initially convicted of culpable homicide, a lesser charge, but after appeal, the verdict was upgraded to murder in 2015. He was sentenced to more than 13 years in prison. Once a symbol of human resilience, Pistorius became a cautionary tale of ego, temper, and tragedy. His story stands as one of the most devastating transformations in modern sports, from inspiration to infamy, from celebrated champion to convicted killer. 10. Claudine Longet. Claudine Longet was the picture of elegance and charm, a French singer and actress who captivated 1960s audiences with her soft voice and effortless grace. Married to crooner Andy Williams, she lived a glamorous Hollywood life, surrounded by fame, luxury, and adoration. But beneath that polished surface lay emotional turbulence that would explode into one of the most shocking celebrity scandals of the decade. After divorcing Williams, Longet began dating Olympic skier Vladimir "Spider" Sabic, a charismatic athlete adored by fans for his daring spirit. Their relationship, however, was far from perfect. Friends described constant fights and jealousy, a clash between two strong personalities that grew more toxic over time. On March 21, 1976, the romance reached a deadly climax when Sabic was shot in his Aspen home. Longet claimed the shooting was accidental, insisting that the gun had discharged while Sabic was showing her how it worked. But investigators found inconsistencies. There was no gun cleaning equipment nearby, and the angle of the wound suggested otherwise. Despite the suspicious details, Longet was charged only with misdemeanor negligent homicide, not murder. During the trial, controversy deepened when evidence was mishandled by police, weakening the prosecution's case. Ultimately, Longet received a sentence of just 30 days in jail, served intermittently over weekends. Public outrage was immense, as many believed her celebrity status protected her from true justice. Afterward, Longet vanished from the spotlight, living quietly with her children. Once adored for her beauty and charm, she became infamous for a death she insisted was accidental, a haunting reminder of how quickly glamour can turn to tragedy when love and jealousy intertwine. 11. Mark Salling. Mark Salling rose to fame as Noah "Puck" Puckerman on the hit TV show Glee, where he played the charming bad boy with a hidden heart. To fans, he was a symbol of rebellious, cool, talented, funny, and magnetic. But behind the scenes, Salling's life was far darker than anyone imagined. His story would not only destroy his promising career, but also end in tragedy, exposing the disturbing reality beneath Hollywood's glittering surface. In 2015, Salling's life unraveled when authorities raided his Los Angeles home and discovered thousands of illegal images involving minors on his computer and hard drives. The revelation shocked fans and colleagues alike, transforming a beloved actor into a symbol of disgrace almost overnight. As details emerged, it became clear this wasn't a misunderstanding. Prosecutors described his crimes as deliberate and deeply exploitative. Facing decades in prison, Salling pleaded guilty in 2017, hoping for a reduced sentence. But before sentencing could take place, his mental state deteriorated rapidly. On January 30th, 2018, he was found dead by apparent suicide near his home in Sunland, California. He was just 35 years old. The aftermath left fans and castmates grappling with conflicting emotions, grief, anger, and disbelief. Many who worked with him struggled to reconcile the person they knew with the crimes he had committed. His death marked a grim end to a career that had once seemed destined for greatness. Mark Salling's story stands as one of the most disturbing in modern Hollywood history, a haunting reminder that fame can't shield anyone from their own darkness, and that hidden evil, once exposed, can destroy everything in its path. 12. Robert Wagner. Robert Wagner was once the epitome of classic Hollywood sophistication, a charming leading man whose suave demeanor made him a favorite in films like Heart to Heart and The Pink Panther. His marriage to actress Natalie Wood was the stuff of headlines, a glamorous union that seemed to capture the essence of old Hollywood romance. But behind the glitz and magazine covers lay years of tension, jealousy, and emotional volatility that would end in one of the most enduring mysteries in Hollywood history. On November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood drowned off the coast of Catalina Island after a night aboard the couple's yacht, Splendor. Also present that night were Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain, Dennis Davern. The group had been drinking heavily, and an argument reportedly broke out between Wagner and Wood shortly before she disappeared. Her body was found hours later, floating near the yacht. Initially, her death was ruled an accident, but questions never stopped swirling. Over the years, witnesses came forward suggesting foul play. The bruises on Wood's body, the sound of shouting, and inconsistencies in statements led authorities to reopen the case in 2011. In 2018, Wagner was officially named a person of interest, though he was never charged. The mystery of Natalie Wood's death continues to haunt Hollywood, part tragedy, part scandal. To some, Wagner remains a grieving husband, wronged by rumor. To others, a man who knows more than he's ever revealed. Once adored as a Hollywood gentleman, he now carries a shadow that time refuses to erase, a haunting legacy of love, loss, and unanswered questions beneath the California waves. 13. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson's story is one of the most infamous falls from grace in American history. Once celebrated as an NFL legend and beloved Hollywood actor, Simpson seemed untouchable, the charismatic face of movies like The Naked Gun and countless commercials. But in 1994, his name became forever synonymous with violence, scandal, and the so-called trial of the century, a media spectacle that divided a nation and changed celebrity culture forever. On June 12, 1994, Simpson's ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman were found brutally murdered outside her Los Angeles home. The scene was gruesome evidence, pointed unmistakably toward Simpson. Blood matching his DNA was found at the crime scene, and a bloody glove linked him to the killings. Yet, when police attempted to arrest him, Simpson fled in a white Ford Bronco, leading to a slow-speed chase broadcast live to millions across the country. The subsequent trial became a cultural phenomenon. Simpson's defense team argued that he was the victim of racist police misconduct, while prosecutors presented overwhelming physical evidence. After months of drama, the jury delivered a shocking verdict: not guilty. The courtroom erupted, and the world reacted with outrage or relief, depending on who you asked. Though acquitted criminally, Simpson's public image never recovered. In 1997, a civil court found him liable for the deaths, ordering him to pay millions in damages. Years later, his bizarre behavior and subsequent imprisonment for armed robbery only deepened his infamy. Once an American hero, O.J. Simpson's legacy became a grim parable of fame, ego, and downfall, proof that even the brightest stars can fall the hardest when their lies catch up to them. 14. Christian Brando. Christian Brando, the troubled son of legendary actor Marlon Brando, grew up in the shadow of Hollywood royalty. His father's fame brought privilege, but it also came with chaos, broken relationships, and emotional neglect. From a young age, Christian struggled with anger and addiction, shaped by a turbulent upbringing that was anything but glamorous. By the early 1990s, his pain and volatility would erupt in a tragedy that exposed the dark underbelly of celebrity life. In 1990, Christian's half-sister, Cheyenne Brando, confided that her boyfriend, Doug Drolet, had been abusive toward her. Enraged, Christian confronted Drolet at Marlon Brando's home on Mulholland Drive. What happened next would change everything. According to Christian, the gun went off accidentally during a heated argument, but Drolet was shot dead. Police arrived to find Marlon Brando distraught, trying to comfort his son as chaos unfolded in the mansion. The case dominated headlines. The combination of Hollywood royalty, domestic violence, and a fatal shooting turned the story into a national obsession. Christian claimed it wasn't murder, but a tragic mistake fueled by emotion and alcohol. In 1991, he pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 years in prison, serving roughly half before being released. The tragedy didn't end there. Cheyenne later took her own life, consumed by guilt and despair. Christian, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild his life, haunted by the events that destroyed his family. He died in 2008 at age 49 from pneumonia. His story is one of fame's cruel inheritance, a man born into privilege but consumed by pain, whose name remains a tragic reminder of how deeply Hollywood's darkness can run behind its golden facade. 15. Rusty Hamer. Rusty Hamer was once one of America's most beloved child stars, capturing hearts as the witty, adorable son on The Danny Thomas Show during the 1950s and 1960s. Viewers adored his natural charm and comedic timing, and for a while, it seemed he was destined for a lifetime of success. But like so many child actors, Rusty's story took a dark and heartbreaking turn as fame faded and reality set in. When the show ended, Hamer struggled to find new roles. Hollywood had little interest in the grown-up version of its former child prodigy. The fame, fortune, and attention that once defined his world vanished almost overnight. Without guidance or emotional support, he drifted through a series of odd jobs, unable to escape the shadow of his childhood stardom. His life became a quiet tragedy. Depression, isolation, and financial struggles replaced the applause and laughter he once knew. In his later years, Hamer's mental health deteriorated. Friends said he often spoke about his frustrations and regrets, haunted by a career that had ended before adulthood even began. On January 18, 1990, at just 42 years old, Hamer died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in his Louisiana home. The news devastated former co-stars and fans, many of whom never knew how much he had been suffering. Rusty Hamer's story remains one of Hollywood's most sorrowful cautionary tales, a tragic reminder of how fleeting fame can be and how devastating its loss often is. Behind every smiling child star, there's a person who must eventually face the silence after the applause fades, and for Hamer, that silence proved too heavy to bear.